Hello and welcome to Now That I'm Here. I'm your host, Mandy, and I'm starting a podcast. I am very excited because I am finally doing this. I've been saying for quite a few months now, I'm having lots of ideas of what I want to talk about, how I want to start, when I want to start. I've just been wanting to do something creative for a long time now. Basically, for the last 10 years, I've gone through different waves of inspiration in different areas. And this is the first time, though, that I'm actually putting a little bit more intention and clarity into what my plan is and what I want to do and where what I'm trying to get and put into this. So that's what this first episode is about, really, is just setting the scene as to what this podcast is, who I am a little bit, what I'm going to be talking about, and all of that. I've been finding myself waiting to feel like I've arrived in adulthood, like I'm doing it all right, like all the stars are lining up, like I'm doing the right things that I'm supposed to do. And for just some sort of validation that this is it, this is adulthood, you're doing it. And I just keep feeling like I'm in the messy middle of all of it. There's so many transitions that happen when you're in your 20s, and there's so many transitions that happen when you live abroad. And I think that I just want this podcast to be a space where I talk about that messy middle, where you don't necessarily feel like you have everything figured out, where you definitely feel like you do have some things figured out, where you have direction, but just kind of talking through these, I think, pretty common things and these pretty common feelings that a lot of people, especially in your upper 20s, feel as you start to settle into, as you start to feel like the pressure of needing to feel like you've done something, that you've done something right, and that you're in the right spot at the right time. I don't know if that makes any sense, but basically what I'm trying to say is I do feel like a lot of times, there's a lot of pressure to be looking and feeling and living a certain way at certain stages of your life. And it's really easy, I think, especially at this age, to start to question or wonder if where you are is a good place to be. And I want this podcast to be me just kind of exploring that and just kind of exploring all of the various thoughts and things that happen at this stage in life that I think it's common to feel and it's common to go through, but it's maybe not necessarily what's being spoken about. It's not what's out there. It's not what you put on your curated Instagram reels, your TikToks or whatever. And I want this to be the space for real life. So just a quick background into who I am. I will go into more stories later on specific points in my life and all of that, but just for some context here. So I was born and raised in Texas. I lived in Texas until I was 22. And then after I graduated college is when I moved to Prague and I taught English there. Well, I started teaching English there. I lived in Prague for 3.5 years and then now have been living in Finland for 2 years. And the reason I'm in Finland is because I'm married to a Finn, and that is the weirdest thing. If you would have ever told me 10 years ago, you're going to be living in Finland, I would not have believed you. That's just the weirdest, the craziest concept to me. But yeah, that's how I got here. As I said, I'm going to go into more stories of specific times in my life and some transformations that happened at different points and all of this stuff. But yeah, that's the basic context for anyone new who's listening who doesn't really know much about me. Now, in terms of why this podcast exists and what I'll be talking about, as I kind of mentioned at the beginning, I want this to be a space where it's just honesty about growing up and growing into yourself and figuring out life in your 20s, your late 20s, and as you feel like you need to be kind of getting yourself together and figuring out a lot of big things. I will preface this with I don't want this to be an advice podcast, and if it ever sounds like I'm giving advice, please don't take it. Just kidding. I don't necessarily want to give advice. I just want to talk through the different topics, and questioning and thinking out loud as I go. And I hope that will be something that will connect people and make people also feel who are in similar situations or who are in similar life stages, like really heard and seen, and maybe surprised that other people are also going through and feeling the same thing. In terms of what I will actually cover on a practical level, as I mentioned, life in your late 20s, when you're just trying to figure everything out, when everything's a little bit open-ended. Clearly, I live abroad, and so that's definitely going to be the lens in which I speak on a lot of this. But I will also speak a little bit about life abroad and just like that feeling of being split between places. I will also touch on mental health, especially the hard seasons in Finland, seasonal depression in general. Didn't know I had that till I moved to Finland. Actually, no, till I moved to Czech Republic. Found that out there. That was a fun one. Relationships, identity shifts. I think that this stage in life, or just these years, are a lot of so many changes that are going on the outside, and then also internally into identity and who I am and where I'm going, and am I happy with who I am and all of that. And then finally, all of this kind of encompassing idea of building a life that feels like yours, even when things aren't clear, even when things aren't set in stone, and just stepping into confidence of knowing who you are and living in the kind of way that you want to live in. So those are some of the main themes that I'll be covering, but I will try to stay pretty flexible. Hopefully I will have a few listeners. Let's see. And then if there's some questions that start coming in or some topics that people want me to cover, then I will definitely be tailoring my content towards that. But I just feel like the last many years of my life has really brought me to this point where like, I want to talk about this. I'm ready to talk about this. I think it's an exciting, interesting topic, and I hope that people who are listening really feel heard and seen, as I said. Now, in terms of who I imagine listening to this, I imagine that, I'm just going to speak directly to, that you're in your upper 20s or early 30s, and that in general, you want to live with intention and feel like you're building something that's yours. Of course, you're interested in the themes that I've just covered, and maybe you do live abroad, maybe you don't. I do hope that this is something that will be relatable for people who are experiencing some of the things that I experience when I live abroad and when I bring up those topics, but also broad enough that it also is just encompassing the feelings of this stage of life when there's a lot of transitions happening at once. So yeah, I hope that if you've made it this far, you are interested, you're excited about what we're going to be talking about on this podcast. And I'm just excited to start and to put this out there and then to just hear what there is in return. So if you are listening to this, it would be really appreciated if you would give, I guess, like a review on the podcast. I think you can review on podcast or on Spotify, and then you could like it. I do also just want to mention that I am recording these episodes as well. So I have like just the audio on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but then I will also be putting full recordings of the videos or of the podcast on YouTube as well, if you're more of a visual person. So thank y'all so much for joining me for the little quick welcome episode. And soon we are going to dive into episode 1, where we actually get into the first topic. So I'm very excited and hope that I'll see you there.